As you I'm sure know, there are several different options you have as far as bankruptcy and using bankruptcy as a facility to stop a foreclosure sale in order to proceed with a short sale. One of those options is Chapter 7. Another that we'll be talking about today is Chapter 13, and we'll keep it to those two. Chapter 7, first thing anyone would need to know, and I would need to know in reference to your clients, is whether they are eligible to file. Individuals, corporations, LLCs, partnerships are all eligible to file Chapter 7. Corporations don't receive a discharge like individuals would. It's a whole other conversation we don't really need to have today. But one of the most important things that you need to realize when talking to your clients about potentially filing for bankruptcy to stall a foreclosure sale, and one that a lot of attorneys these days I find are not explaining well to the clients, is that when you file a bankruptcy, whether it's Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, but especially in a Chapter 7, a bankruptcy estate is created the minute the client files that bankruptcy. What that means is any assets, any potential assets that your clients might have at the time of filing the bankruptcy are now subject to being taken possession of by the bankruptcy estate. This is really important because these days we're finding that a lot of people are filing bankruptcy to stall a foreclosure as a temporary remedy and then allowing their case to get dismissed a couple weeks later. What they don't realize is that even if you do just a skeletal filing, which means you just file a bankruptcy with your name, your social, just your basic information, you don't give a listing to the court of your assets or your income, knowing that you might have, for instance, a home that has substantial equity in it. If you don't give that full list, you think you're just filing your basic skeletal filing. Within 2 weeks, if you don't file the remainder of the information required by the court, they will dismiss your case. Not so. The U.S. Trustee's Office, the judge, or the Chapter 7 trustee can all decide to audit that particular client. So it's very important when you guys are talking to your clients, and when I talk to the clients, before deciding to file bankruptcy, we get a summary of the type of assets they have. For instance, does their home have equity? Does it have more than $75,000 to $100,000 in equity? At that point, we have to do an analysis. We might not be able to file because they might potentially lose their home in the bankruptcy. Obviously, these days, that's really rare, especially for short sale clients. It wouldn't be an issue at all. But they might have other assets. Their home might not have equity, but they might have annuities, stocks, bonds, various things. So that's something very important to keep in mind, that it's not so simple as using bankruptcy as a tool to file and then just get your case dismissed later long enough to forestall the short sale or the foreclosure sale. Once you've gotten past the eligibility requirements, which also include income, by the way, the client needs to have income that falls below either the median income in the country or other requirements. If they fit them, they also need to keep in mind that they have to qualify via income as well. Once you've gotten past that, Chapter 7, again, is a temporary remedy. Chapter 7 will only stall a foreclosure for, I tell my clients, a minimum of 45 days, and I'll explain that. And it could take months and months depending on the creditor themselves. So I'll explain the 45 days now, and it explains also why it might take longer. What happens when you file bankruptcy is, and I'll tell you from the creditor's perspective, what would happen to us is, for instance, let's say Bank of America is the lender on the home. When the bankruptcy is filed, Bank of America will receive notice within about 5 to 7 business days from the bankruptcy court. Once they receive that notice, and sooner in the case of an imminent foreclosure sale, like when we have a foreclosure that's being, a home that's being sold the next day, we will give Bank of America notice right away that we have filed to stop the sale. So let's just say within 5 to 7 business days, Bank of America gets notice of the bankruptcy filing. They will then send their request to the law firm, the creditor law firm, to process what's called a motion for relief from the automatic stay. This motion from relief from the automatic stay is the bank asking the court to lift the automatic stay that goes into effect. That's that bankruptcy protection that you get that stops the foreclosure sale. The bank is asking the court to lift that stay so that they can proceed with foreclosure. The legal grounds for them to do so are twofold. One, the borrower, debtor, your client, must be behind on their mortgage payments. And two, there's no equity in the home. If they can satisfy those two grounds, the bank is going to get the stay lifted. These days, very easy to get the stay lifted, especially in the case of a short sale, what we're talking about here. Clients that are looking for a short sale are generally behind on the mortgage. And two, if it's a short sale, there's no equity in the home. So they will get the stay lifted. It's all about the processing time that it takes to file that motion. And again, by the time, let's say, Bank of America gets that motion to the creditor law firm and they process it, it's about 2 weeks. Once it's filed, there's a 28-day notice requirement. So let's just say 30 days. Add it all up, you have about 45 days from the time that you file the bankruptcy until the time that the bank can get the stay lifted and proceed with foreclosure. Now, if the bank takes a while, which happens, to get the information to the creditor law firm, that prolongs it. So the longer it takes for the bank to get the law firm involved to file the motion, the longer your client will have to negotiate a short sale. One of the things I personally do, because of my relationship with Pike Duncan, because Pike Duncan is generally the firm that gets these requests for these motions, I basically call up my old paralegal and say, Michael, we need more time. So I can negotiate 30 to 90 days extra time for you guys to negotiate your short sales with the bank. So again, it's a temporary remedy, but it can be effective in a lot of cases because these days I think you guys can do short sales in 2-3 months, correct me if I'm wrong. So that might be just enough time for you guys to do what you need to do. Again, this is a recap of what we just talked about. It is a temporary remedy. The foreclosure sale is stopped, providing you guys time to negotiate the short sale. On number 4, as far as the attorney working closely with you, I'm sure you guys already have experience. You need an authorization letter from the law firm to negotiate on behalf of your clients. We get that to you immediately. So once you actually have an offer and you need to start negotiating with the bank, you would contact our office and we would immediately get you that authorization letter so that you can begin negotiating the short sale with the bank. One of the most important things that a Chapter 7 does in terms of facilitating a short sale is it gives you negotiating leverage with the second mortgage. If there's a second mortgage, I'm sure you guys all know that it becomes a real hindrance in the process, right? Because it's always the second mortgage lender that gets hung up on what they're willing to settle for so that you can execute in full the short sale. When a client files Chapter 7, they are being discharged of all of their debt. That includes their secured debt. So any mortgage lender has 2 things that they can hold over the head of a debtor, right, your client. One is the note, right? So they're personally liable on this loan. And 2 is the lien on the house. Well, via the bankruptcy discharge, the client is no longer going to be liable on the note. So the second mortgage lender, as you're negotiating a short sale, can't use that against you. You now have the leverage because you can now tell them, listen, they're not going to be personally liable. This is not going to be a recourse loan. You're not going to be able to go after them and sue them. So you might as well settle for something. Because the other thing that you have is the lien. And your lien is worthless because this is a short sale, meaning that there's probably less equity in the home than that which would cover even the first mortgage. So you use that to your advantage, the fact that your client is in a Chapter 7, and let them know, if you don't negotiate with us, the house is going to go to foreclosure and you're going to get nothing anyways. So take something better than nothing. So that's the most effective thing. The last thing here, number 8, sometimes a lender will require a reaffirmation agreement in order to keep the home. This is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not exactly true. I never have my clients sign a reaffirmation agreement. Because, like I said, the Chapter 7 will get rid of your client's personal liability on that loan. The last thing we want them to do is reaffirm their liability by executing a reaffirmation agreement with the mortgage lender. It's a huge debt in today's economy, in today's real estate market and job market. With all the fluctuations we have, I don't know if my clients, your clients, are going to have a job tomorrow. The last thing I'm going to have them do is reaffirm their obligation on either the first mortgage or the second mortgage. And again, this is not something that really pertains to you because you're trying to facilitate a short sale, meaning you're trying to get rid of the home anyways, and we don't want to have them remain obligated on the loan if the home is going to short sale. Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is a little bit better as a tool to use to forestall a sale in terms of obtaining a short sale, and that's because you can have an indefinite amount of time to work on the short sale in a Chapter 13. As far as eligibility, an individual, they have to have regular income, and there are debt limits. There's unsecured debt limits of $360,000, and that's going to include the second mortgage. So in most cases, especially clients that are going to facilitate a short sale, their second mortgage is wholly unsecured, and that adds to the unsecured debt limit. So that's something to keep in mind. They won't be eligible if they exceed that debt limit. So credit cards, medical bills, personal loans, and the unsecured portion of that second mortgage will all fall under unsecured debt. Secured debt limit is a little bit harder to reach. Most people don't have an issue with that, $1,081,000. But the most important thing about the Chapter 13 is you do have to have regular income, and you have to be able to fund a Chapter 13 plan. Only about 20% of Chapter 13s ever survive the full 3 to 5 year term, and the reason is because most people can't afford it. This is the caveat to Chapter 13. We can use it as a stall tactic, and as an effective stall tactic, but the only way that the Chapter 13 is going to remain open and give you as much time as possible to facilitate your short sale, which you'll be doing, negotiating during the pendency of the bankruptcy, is if they make their plan payment. Their plan payment is comprised of the arrearages that they have on the first mortgage. And in some cases, as you guys know, it's 12, 14 months of arrearages. That's a lot. When you add it up and break it down over 60 payments, you can have a $1,000 monthly payment just for your plan payment. In addition to that, they have to make their ongoing mortgage payment. Let's say their ongoing mortgage payment is $2,000 a month on the first mortgage, plus the plan payment, and then add property taxes and insurance on top of that. Just to cover their home, they're going to have to come out of pocket potentially $3,000 plus a month. It's got to be feasible for them if they're going to use a Chapter 13. The reason I bring this up is it's really important to talk to your clients about short sales, and hopefully they come and talk to you, which is the biggest problem, right? They don't talk to us until the last minute. Short sales or loan mods, whatever they're going to do with their home well in advance so they can plan for stuff like this. That's our biggest problem. That's the biggest hurdle, getting your name out there, getting your service out there, and hopefully attracting the client before they call you at the 11th hour when they have a sale the next day. As far as a Chapter 13 goes, a misnomer in Chapter 13 is that the court can modify the terms of your loan. It's not true. There was a bill out there, but it did not pass, which a lot of us wish did, where it would allow the judges in bankruptcy court to actually modify the terms of the mortgage notes. I'm sure you can imagine what the banks did when they rallied against that bill, and they succeeded, of course. But there is a way around that, and I'll get to that in the next slide here. What you guys need to know is, again, it can stall foreclosure indefinitely as long as your client has the money to pay into it on a monthly basis. If they do choose to remain in the Chapter 13, despite the fact that they short sale a house, which they can do during the Chapter 13 plan. They can start it to prevent the sale of their home, and during the Chapter 13 plan, they can actually proceed with the short sale. So another little misnomer out there is that you can't sell your house when you're in bankruptcy. Not true. We petition the court, we ask permission. You guys get your objective out of it, which is to have the short sale, execute the short sale, and they can remain in the Chapter 13 if they wish to. Most people don't. Most people are only in it to save the house. If you can't save the house, then they let it go. But it does get rid of their credit card debts just like Chapter 7 would. It does give them a lot of other benefits that a Chapter 7 bankruptcy would give them. The issue, again, is that it's rather expensive, and if they do stay in it, the timeline could be as long as 5 years. Now, as far as what you can do with a mortgage and modifying it inside of a Chapter 13 plan, and I apologize for the typo. This is actually supposed to say cram down with a C, and that's my fault. But what you can do is you can cram down a mortgage. So here are the guidelines. Let's say you have a client that's considering a short sale. But within a Chapter 13, they have the option of having us file a motion to avoid their second lien if the home is worth less than what they owe on the first. Does that make sense? So if the home has less equity than what they owe on the first mortgage, that leaves the second mortgage wholly unsecured. They can file a motion to extinguish or avoid the second lien, thereby lifting the lien off of the property. That leaves them with just the first mortgage on their home. If it's a principal residence, there's not much we can do as far as modifying the terms. But if it happens to be a rental property, we can do a cram down. And what that does is it crams down the note value to the fair market value of the home. So if the home is only worth $100,000, but the note, what they owe on it is $150,000, we can cram it down to $100,000 inside of a bankruptcy. The caveat to that is that they have to pay off that $100,000 within the term of the bankruptcy. Cram downs, something a lot of attorneys I'm finding don't realize, is that it has to be paid off within, let's say, the 5-year full term of the bankruptcy. So if your client can swing it, they just save themselves $50,000 plus whatever they owed on the second. Most people can't, unfortunately. But you know, one of those things that's another benefit to filing Chapter 13. In your case, you're going to use the Chapter 13 to facilitate the short sale, and they're going to get out. That's pretty much how it's going to happen. There's no other real reason for them to stay in a Chapter 13, or we'll convert them to a Chapter 7 at that point so that they didn't file bankruptcy for nothing. You got to facilitate the short sale. They don't have a foreclosure on their record. We convert them to a Chapter 7, get rid of all their credit card debt, whatever other debts that they might have that are eligible for discharge, including, by the way, taxes. And then, you know, at that point, it's a matter of fixing their credit. Probably the best thing that ever happened to them. This is about the stripping of the second mortgage, which I already talked about. If the fair market value of the home doesn't exceed what they owe on the first, they can then get rid of the second mortgage on their home. By the way, in a Chapter 7, you cannot extinguish a lien on a home unless it is a judicial lien. For instance, credit card sues your client, they put an abstract of judgment recorded in the county recorder's office, which attaches like a lien to their home. We can get rid of those type of liens. Second mortgages are consensual liens. They cannot be get extinguished in a Chapter 7. But one thing we do is sometimes a client thinks they're going to short sale their home to avoid a foreclosure, right? They get into the Chapter 7, they've gotten rid of all their other debts, and they decide, oh, I can afford the home now. Can't afford the second, but I can afford the first, which, you know, for lack of a better term, sucks for you guys because you just lost the short sale. But in terms of making your client ultimately happy, one of the things that we do is we go back after the Chapter 7 discharge and we negotiate a buy-off of the second mortgage. Since they are no longer personally liable on that note, and since there's generally no equity to cover that second mortgage, they will take something as low as 5-10% of the note value to basically release the lien. So that's just a tidbit of information to keep in the back of your head as far as the benefits of bankruptcy for your clients. So here's what I do for you. I offer a free attorney consultation. And in my case, it's not just one, it's multiple attorney consultations. I find that I've had clients where they've never paid me a cent and we're just waiting for the right time to file, and they've been my client for a year. So that's something that I do, and at the end I will also provide you not only with my office number but my cell phone number. And the reason that I do this is so that if you guys have questions, If your clients have questions, it's a last-minute thing. It happens to be Saturday. It's fine. You can call me anytime. I think that one of the biggest problems out there right now is the lack of information, and I think part of the reason is because attorneys are notoriously not available. But I will make myself available to you. You can call me as many times as you need to. I work with a lot of real estate agents, and they call me constantly, and it's not a problem. So the way that this will work is, one of the benefits is the door hangers. You'll get the door hangers that are on your desks, and you'll put your information on them, advertise like you normally would with door hangers, and then you can always call me or use me as an asset, the fact that you have the ability to call an attorney. And by the way, you will call me. There's no paralegal. My paralegal does not handle my cases, doesn't file my petitions, doesn't prepare my petitions. I do everything, and only I communicate with the clients. Only thing my paralegal does is administrative work. So just so you know, when you do call me, you'll be talking directly to me. And I'll give you whatever information you need, and that's something you can advertise yourself with, that you have basically an attorney in your back pocket at your beck and call. And here are the door hangers. And Frank will explain more later about where you can get the door hangers if you choose to use those. Another way to use this same tool is through email. So obviously we all use email as a major networking tool. So you can email this information to your clients, and again, let them know that, hey, if you need it, because you probably will in terms of a short sale, an attorney, free legal advice, I have a real-life bankruptcy attorney that, we can call at the drop of a hat anytime and ask whatever questions you need. I think that would probably be comforting to some people in the situation that they would require your services for. And here's an example of what Frank can offer you guys in terms of email networking. So I think this is a Word document that he'll provide to you. You'll put your picture, your phone number, your contact information there, and then email that off to your network sphere. That's me. That's my office phone number. Again, you guys are free to call me anytime. Anytime I'm not in the office, my office will forward my calls to my cell phone anyways. Even if you call on the weekend, that number is forwarded to my cell phone. But if you guys would like, I'll give you my cell phone number as well right now. You can call me again, evening, Saturday, Sunday, not a problem. It is 310-916-3079. And on my business cards that I think you guys all have, you can also email me questions. And again, it might be for a specific client, or it might just be a general question. It's fine with me. I'm happy to answer them.
Can you please repeat the number?
Yes, 310-916-3079.
Thank you.
And that's it. Do you guys?
Questions?
Yes, absolutely. Do you guys have any questions?
Is there any advantage to them doing a short sale? It's because the bankruptcy stays on for 7 years, so what's the...
Well, I'll tell you something about that. There's a major advantage because they prevent foreclosure. Believe it or not, bankruptcy is not credit ruin. And even though a bankruptcy stays on your report for 7 to 10 years, you can actually have a credit score over 700 within 6 to 12 months. One of the things I do, and I don't charge my clients for it, is I teach them how to repair their credit. And clients, when I tell them this, don't believe you, and then 6 months after their discharge, they call me and say, oh my God, my credit score is 720. Parisa, thank you so much. I just got a car. So we teach them what to do. The worst thing that can happen to your credit is a foreclosure. And that's something you can let your clients know as a selling point for your services. A foreclosure, as you know, not only will prevent a conventional loan for a mortgage for 4 to 5 years, but the way that it remains on your credit and the way that it's reported on your credit drags your credit score down so much and for so long that it is way worse than a bankruptcy. And so a bankruptcy, it's because a bankruptcy will wipe your slate clean. When they say, it's a fresh start, that's part of what they're talking about. You are getting a fresh start in many ways, not just the clearing of your debt, but also the clearing of the debt on your credit report. So There's 2 points to good credit. One is credit repair, which is the most difficult thing to do, to repair all the blemishes that are on people's credit reports all the time. And then credit rebuilding. Credit rebuilding is easy. Bankruptcy does the hard part for you. You no longer have to repair your credit. Your slate is wiped clean. Now all you have to do is rebuild, and that's what we teach you to do. With a foreclosure, though, you can't do that. It's very difficult. So again, a selling point for you guys, that's the advantage of short sale over bankruptcy.
Okay.
For their ultimate credit score.
Okay, if you have a short, okay, now like say you have a short sale, you don't have a buyer yet, so you're not negotiating, and the bank is going to go ahead and do a foreclosure. You do the bankruptcy, you don't have anything to negotiate with. That to me is a problem. What do? Advertise it saying we still need a buyer, but you know.
It's really hard to negotiate with the bank when you don't have a buyer.
And you're trying to save the short sale with a, so the chances are is the bankruptcy doesn't work unless you have a negotiating.
Not necessarily, because if you don't do the bankruptcy and you have a sale tomorrow, you have nothing anyways. So you might as well do the bankruptcy to try to at least
look for a buyer.
Have time to, you need time. Whether you already have a buyer and you need to negotiate, whether you need to look for a buyer. So you need time, and that's what the bankruptcy does for you. It gives you that time. But it's better, again, than letting them go to foreclosure.
So it's better to be, so what you're saying is the best thing is to be in the negotiation period should this thing happen?
No, that's a really good question because it brings up a really good point. When you are in the midst of negotiating a short sale, let's say you already have your buyer, okay, and you've already begun negotiating with the bank. Something that you need to keep in mind is the minute your client files for bankruptcy, you are now rerouted to the bankruptcy department. This is a good and bad. The bad part is all the negotiations you've done with your negotiator at the bank are now gone. You now have to start over with someone in the bankruptcy department. So in that sense, it could throw you back. The great thing about the bankruptcy department, though, is they're dealing with much fewer clients. You are now dealing with direct bankruptcy representatives of the bank. And it makes it a much quicker process because they're not as inundated with the mass population through the loss mitigation department that you would have originally gone through. So good and bad. I mean, it's one step back, but possibly 2 steps forward when they file a bankruptcy. But, that's something that we take case by case. I'll have an agent that'll call me and say, hey, we're almost done with the short sale. They're saying 30 days foreclosure. I say, let's wait. Let's not file the bankruptcy. Let's see if the short sale actually gets approved and executed. I can file bankruptcy up until the last minute. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have filed bankruptcy at midnight for someone that has a 9 o'clock sale the next morning. The law is, as long as we file even a minute before the sale is supposed to take place, the sale is void. So even if the bank doesn't get notice in time, which obviously they wouldn't if we filed a minute before, and they proceed with the foreclosure sale, the sale becomes void anyways. So it's fine. We can wait until the very last minute if we need to. But that's one of those things that you have to take on a case-by-case basis. The most important thing you can do on your part is find a buyer as soon as possible. Whenever that is. Find the buyer as soon as possible. But, we can't produce them out of thin air. If we've already filed and they haven't, gotten an offer yet, then obviously that's an issue.
So if you file bankruptcy and the seller is working out the details of bankruptcy, that will slow down the process because the seller has to really clarify their situation as far as the bankruptcy conditions are concerned until the buyer can understand in what position he's going to be taking the house. Is that correct?
The bankruptcy won't really affect the buyer or the seller in that.
It would affect the asset of the home.
Well, the only thing that they care about, the seller, insofar as the bankruptcy is concerned, is that they're using it as a delay tactic. It's not going to affect, I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question properly or not, so maybe I'm not answering you correctly.
Well,
but
I'm looking at it from the point of view of my client as the buyer is concerned.
Oh, okay, as the buyer.
And how I can address his concern when I tell them, hey, there's a bankruptcy on here?
Yeah, okay. You're looking at it from the buyer's perspective. Yes, there is an issue, right, because it can stall things a bit. Again, it's a little bit unknown because one hand you have a short sale and you have someone who's not in bankruptcy and you're again dealing with the loss mitigation department. On the other hand, you have someone who's in a bankruptcy and that might delay things, but it also might speed things up because now that seller is working through the bankruptcy department, which is a much quicker process. So that's what you would tell your buyer client is, hey, they're in a bankruptcy, this could work for you or against you. We just kind of have to wait and see. That's another thing these days. This whole short sale process is so new, right? Nobody in our generation has ever had to deal with it before. And because of that, things are changing every day. So one of the biggest problems is, my client Bob said he heard this, and that. My client Mary, said he heard this, and that from their neighbors or from their cousins or whoever. Things are changing every day. So, before it used to be horrific, right? The short sale process would take months and months and months and months. Now I'm finding my clients doing them in